My name is Lily Bailey, and for as long as I can remember, my family made one thing clear. I was disposable. They drilled it into me with every sidelong glance, every whispered favor for Sarah, every dollar I handed over to keep their lives afloat. But nothing proved it more than the night my sister threw my daughter out like trash. Emily, my 12-year-old, my heart, discarded, while I was away. The phone call came late. I just landed, exhausted from a week-long business trip, when Sarah's voice cut through the line, sharp, impatient. "Look, Lily, don't be dramatic. Mom and Dad agreed she needed to go." My fingers curled around the table's edge, nails digging into the wood. The world blurred, lights dimmed, sounds faded, but my mind sharpened, honed to a razor's edge. "She's a kid, Sarah. My kid," I said, voice too calm, too steady. She sighed, like I was the inconvenience. "She'll be fine. I mean, you always land on your feet, don't you? You'll figure it out." Figure it out. Those words echoed, a slap I couldn't dodge. I should have seen it coming. The favoritism, Sarah, the golden child, 35 and still their darling. The entitlement, years of her living off my sweat, my money, my silence. The way they treated me like an outsider in my own blood. They thought I'd break. They thought I'd beg. They thought I'd crumble under their betrayal, crawl back like always, desperate for scraps of their approval. They had no idea. They'd just made the biggest mistake of their lives. I hung up, breath shallow, hands trembling, not from fear, from rage. Sarah was probably lounging in the house I paid for, sipping wine from glasses I bought, smirking at how she'd finally erased me. She thought I was devastated, scrambling, helpless. She was wrong. Because what Sarah didn't know, what none of them knew, was that I'd seen this coming. I'd felt the cracks for years, and unlike her, I didn't act on impulse. I planned. The trip had been for Emily, every grueling hour to give her a future, stability, a life better than mine. And while I was gone, my family, my own blood, decided she was a burden. Margaret, 62, and Tom, 65, my parents, stood by. Watched. Did nothing. They'd always chosen Sarah, but this was a line they couldn't uncross. My grip tightened, knuckles white. They thought I'd keep paying their bills, keep bowing to their whims, keep quiet like I always had. Not this time. I wasn't crying. I wasn't begging. I was done. The phone went silent, but my mind roared. Sarah thought she'd won, secured her place as the only daughter who mattered. She had no idea she'd just lost everything. Because I don't lose. I endure. I wait. And when I strike, I don't miss. They wanted me gone? Fine. I'd leave. But I'd take it all with me. The house, the money, their precious illusions. They'd learn what disposable really meant. And by the time I was done, they'd wish they'd never crossed Lily Bailey. The car hummed under me, tires chewing the dark street. My knuckles ached, white on the steering wheel, every mile from the airport fueling the fire in my chest. I was 38, too old for this betrayal, too tired to pretend it didn't cut. But it did. Sarah had thrown Emily out. 12 years old, my little girl, alone. And Margaret and Tom let it happen. My family, my blood, my burden. The headlights swept the driveway, illuminating the porch of the house I'd paid for. Sarah's house, technically, but we both knew who kept the lights on, who covered the mortgage when she forgot, who bailed her out of every mess she made. And there she was, Emily. My daughter sat on the steps, arms wrapped around her knees, her small frame hunched against the wind. Her teal backpack, a bright, stupid thing with a bunny keychain she'd begged for, clutched tight to her chest. She looked tiny, breakable. My heart clenched, a fist in my throat. I barely parked. The door flew open, and I was across the driveway in seconds. "Emily," I breathed, kneeling in front of her, hands on her arms. She flinched. That nearly broke me. I'd never given her a reason to fear me, never raised my voice, never my hand. But tonight, after what they did, she was scared. Scared I'd be mad at her. I exhaled slow, smoothing her hair back. Baby, it's okay. I'm here now. Her lip trembled, and before I could say more, she threw her arms around me, burying her face in my shoulder. I tried to knock, Mommy, she mumbled, voice muffled, shaking. I knocked and knocked, but Aunt Sarah wouldn't let me in. She said we didn't live here anymore. The last thread of restraint I had snapped. My daughter, 12, standing in the cold, pounding on a door I owned, while Sarah sipped wine inside. I pulled back, just enough to cup her face, forcing calm I didn't feel. Did Grandma and Grandpa say anything? Emily hesitated, then, in the smallest voice, whispered, They just watched. They just watched. My jaw locked so hard it hurt. Margaret and Tom, 62 and 65, my parents, the people who raised me, had looked at their granddaughter, helpless, alone, and done nothing. Not a word, not a move. Silent approval. I'd spent my life trying to prove myself to them, pouring money into their comfort, begging for love they never gave. And this was my reward. I wasn't surprised. I was done. I stood, taking Emily's hand, guiding her to the car. Her fingers were cold, trembling. As I opened the passenger door, the front door swung wide. Sarah, 35, smug, stepping onto the porch in a silk robe, expensive, one she couldn't afford. Wineglass in hand, like nothing had happened. Lily? What are you doing here? She asked, confusion feigned, brows raised. The sight of her, comfortable, untouched, nearly sent me over the edge. She'd thrown my child out, and she had the gall to stand there, untouched by consequence. I didn't react. She thrived on fights, on screams, on chaos. I wouldn't give her that. Instead, I turned, met her eyes with a stare so cold it could have frozen her smug little world. Don't worry, Sarah, I said, smooth, emotionless. I'm just picking up my daughter from your trash heap. Her frown deepened, lips parting. Lily, don't be so dramatic. She's fine. Fine. Emily, 12, scared, alone in the dark, fine. Sarah truly thought she was untouchable. I inhaled deep, muscles relaxing only to coil tighter inside. We're leaving, I said, simple, final. She scoffed, rolling her eyes. God, you're always so sensitive. I didn't answer. I turned, slid into the driver's seat, and pulled away. Emily sniffled beside me, her backpack clutched like a shield. The house shrank in the rear view, Sarah's silhouette fading. For the first time, walking away from them, I felt something new. Not fear, not guilt. Freedom. They thought they'd won. Sarah in my house, Margaret and Tom nodding along, believing I'd crawl back. They had no idea who they'd just unleashed. This wasn't just leaving. This was war, and I'd make sure they felt every blow. Sarah thought she'd erased me. She didn't know I was about to erase her right back. The hotel room was dim, a cheap lamp flickering in the corner. Emily slept beside me, her small chest rising and falling under the scratchy blanket. At 12, she looked too fragile, too worn for a kid her age. I tucked her in, kissed her forehead, and whispered a promise I meant with every fiber of my being. Everything's going to be okay, baby. She gave a hesitant nod before exhaustion pulled her under, leaving me alone with the silence and my rage. I sat on the bed's edge, phone in hand, the glow casting shadows across my face. At 38, I'd spent years fixing their messes, Sarah's recklessness, Margaret and Tom's dependence. No more. My fingers moved fast, logging into the banking app. First, the mortgage, canceled. Then, the utilities, cut. Insurance, credit cards, every automatic payment tying me to that house. Gone, one by one. I watched them vanish from the screen, a weight lifting with each tap. Let's see how long Sarah, the golden child at 35, survives without her golden goose. She didn't know yet. She was probably still sprawled on my couch, smug in her victory, thinking she'd finally pushed me out. But I'd been preparing for this. Over the past year, I'd quietly moved my money, untangled my name from their accounts, severed every financial thread while she sipped wine in blissful ignorance. The house was hers in name only. My payments, my stability kept it standing, not anymore. I exhaled, slow and controlled, the kind of breath that steadies a hunter before the kill. Next, the laptop. I pulled it onto my lap, opened a hidden folder, and stared at the evidence I'd collected over years. Sarah's arrogance was her weakness. She assumed no one watched, assumed I'd never fight back. She was wrong. There it was. Credit card fraud in my name from 2 years ago, debts she'd racked up using Margaret and Tom's info, emails where she'd forged my signature for a loan, every lie, every theft, neatly organized, waiting. I'd never planned to use it, not until now, not until she threw Emily out and made this personal. My heart pounded, but my hands were steady. I pulled up my contacts, scrolled to Jenna Morrison, attorney, 42, the best I knew. She hated people like Sarah, parasites who thrived on others' spines. I dialed. It was late, but she answered on the third ring, voice groggy but alert. Lily? Everything okay? I inhaled, slow, calculated. I need to file for financial separation from my parents, I said, cold, precise. And I need every transaction tied to them pulled. Every bill, every loan, every expense I've covered in the last decade. A beat of silence. Then Jenna exhaled sharply. Lily, what happened? My voice didn't waver. Sarah happened. She threw Emily out of the house. My parents let her. Jenna inhaled sharp and quick. Jesus, I'm so sorry. What do you need me to do? I didn't hesitate. I want my name off everything. If there's anything I can legally claim, I want it. If there's a way to hold Sarah accountable for the money she's stolen, I want it pursued. Her tone turned steely. Consider it done. I hung up, pulse racing, a grim smile tugging at my lips. This wasn't just revenge, this was justice. Sarah thrived on her facade, the perfect daughter, the untouchable queen. Time to shatter it. I opened my email, drafted a message to the State Attorney General's fraud unit. Subject, urgent financial fraud report. I attached everything, every stolen dollar, every forged signature, every debt she'd buried. Then another email to her employer with screenshots of her embezzlement from a past job she'd dodged punishment for. People like Sarah never got caught because someone always protected her. Not anymore. I hit send. Twice. My phone buzzed. Margaret, then Tom, then Sarah. I ignored them all. Instead, I sent one text to Sarah, fingers steady as stone. You made your choice. Now, live with it. Then, I blocked her number, blocked my parents, blocked every voice that ever made me feel small. Sarah thought she'd erased me from the family. She didn't realize I'd already erased them from my life. I turned off the phone, glanced at Emily sleeping, and brushed a strand of hair from her face. We were free. And soon, Sarah would learn just how expensive losing me really was. Sarah's world started crumbling 2 days later. I was at the hotel, sipping coffee, watching the sunrise paint the sky bloody red when the first sign hit. An email from the bank, routine, one she'd probably ignored at first. Your mortgage payment has not been received. Please contact us immediately to avoid penalties. She'd have frowned at 35, confused, dismissing it as a glitch, a minor annoyance. But then the electricity shut off. The Wi-Fi died. Her credit card bounced at some overpriced restaurant she couldn't afford without me. One by one, her comfort slipped away. I didn't need to see it to know. I pictured her in that house, my house, phone in hand, lights gone, panic creeping into her smug little eyes. She'd call Margaret and Tom, 62 and 65, whining for help, but they had nothing to give. She'd try me next. She did. Texts flooded in, frantic, unhinged. What did you do? Mom and Dad are freaking out. The mortgage isn't paid. The bills aren't paid. What's going on? Answer me. I didn't. Not yet. She hadn't suffered enough. She thought this was the worst of it. She had no idea what was coming. Sarah had spent that week gloating, throwing a dinner party in my dining room, surrounded by guests I'd once called friends, toasting to her new chapter. I knew because people sent me pictures. Sarah, wine glass raised, captions stinging like salt. To new beginnings. So proud of my sister for taking control. A fresh start for the real queen of the family. She thought I was broken, shattered, erased. She believed she'd won. The arrogance blinded her to the cracks already forming. The consequences hit hard and fast. No power, no internet, no credit. Her carefully built life, built on my money, my stability, started collapsing, piece by piece. She'd never had money of her own, just mine. She'd never had security, just my support. And now, with me gone, she was nothing. I imagined her pacing that dark house, wine glass empty, the first flicker of fear replacing her smirk. She wasn't in control anymore. She never had been. Her desperation grew. Another text. Lily, this isn't funny. Fix it. Still, I stayed silent, letting her stew. She'd humiliated me, thrown Emily out like garbage, all while playing the perfect daughter. Now, the illusion was cracking. Her friends, those shallow hangers-on, started whispering. Neighbors noticed the lights off, the mail piling up. She'd bragged too loud, too soon, and the fallout was spreading. Then the real blow landed. Her employer got my email, proof of her fraud, her embezzlement, undeniable. By midday, she was suspended. You went too far, she texted, voice cracking through the words. My boss called. I'm out of work. What did you do? Fix this now. She still didn't get it. She thought this was fixable, that I'd swoop in like always. There was no swooping, no mercy. By evening, her landlord, technically me since the house was mine, issued an eviction notice. By nightfall, she was facing reality for the first time in her 35 years. She called that night, voice wrecked. I let it ring, then answered, leaning back, savoring the moment. Lily, please, she choked out, a sob breaking through. Please, what? I asked, voice ice cold, steady as stone. I didn't mean for this to happen. I exhaled slow, letting the silence stretch. Figure it out, I said, sharp, final. Then I hung up. She thought she'd won, thought she'd erased me from the family, secured her throne. She had no idea she'd played right into my hands. Sarah was crumbling, and I was just getting started. She'd built her life on lies, my money, my silence, my forgiveness. Without me, it was dust. She thought I'd break, thought I'd beg. She was wrong. I didn't lose. I planned. And now she was learning what it felt like to have nothing. No home, no job, no sister to catch her fall. The walls were closing in, and I hadn't even played my final card. Sarah thought losing her job was rock bottom. She thought the eviction notice was the end. She was wrong. At 35, she'd spent years ruining my life, stealing my money, my home, my place in our family, and I'd let it slide, too loyal, too forgiving. Not anymore. I was 38, done being her doormat, and I had one last move to make sure she had nothing left to rebuild from. She still had a few credit cards, a tiny emergency fund she thought I didn't know about. I took that too. I walked into the bank the next morning, Emily safe with a sitter, my folder of evidence tucked under my arm. Sarah's biggest secret wasn't a secret to me. She'd been committing financial fraud for years, using my identity, my credit score, to fund her life. Loans in my name, accounts she'd drained, lies she'd spun to keep it hidden. The fraud department took one look at my proof, statements, signatures, emails, and moved fast. By noon, every account in her name was frozen, her credit destroyed, her last scraps of cash seized for investigation. She was broke. Utterly, completely broke. She didn't see it coming. She'd built her reputation on being better than me, the successful one, the responsible one, the daughter who had it all together. I made sure everyone knew the truth. I sent anonymized reports to her social circles, her friends, her former colleagues, the people who'd toasted her at that dinner party. The message was simple. Sarah Bennett has been financially exploiting her family for years. Here's the proof. Bank records, forged documents, every shred of her deceit laid bare. By evening, she was a pariah. Friends ghosting her, her phone buzzing with silence where admiration once lived. Margaret and Tom weren't spared either. At 62 and 65, they'd allowed this, stood by while Sarah threw Emily out, leached off me for years. I'd paid their mortgage, covered their medical bills, kept them comfortable. That stopped overnight. No payments, no mercy. Foreclosure notices hit their inbox within days, insurance lapsed, utilities cut off in 24 hours. They'd built their survival on my back, and when I walked away, it all crashed down. I pictured them in that dark house, scrambling, blaming Sarah, blaming me, never themselves. That evening, Margaret called, her voice frantic, shaking. "Lily, we need to talk." I leaned back, letting the satisfaction settle in my bones. "Oh, about what?" I asked, calm, taunting. She exhaled sharply. "You know what? About the house, the bills, Sarah. This has gone too far." I smirked, unseen but felt. "No, Mom, this is just the beginning." Silence stretched, then her voice cracked. "Lily, sweetheart, we made a mistake, but we're still family." I almost laughed. Family? They hadn't cared about family when Emily stood in the cold, when they let Sarah steal from me for years. I let the pause linger, then spoke, calm as ice. "You made your choice, now live with it." I hung up, cutting her off mid-breath. They didn't realize the house was mine, legally, fully, in my name. They thought I'd gifted it out of kindness, that I'd never pull it from under them. Wrong again. That night, I filed for eviction. 30 days to leave, no negotiations, no second chances. Sarah was already drowning, Margaret and Tom teetering on the edge. Now they had nowhere to go. The night before the deadline, Sarah called again. Her voice was wrecked, barely holding together. "Lily, please don't do this," she whispered. "I have nowhere else to go." I took a deep breath, savoring the moment, the reversal of power. "That's funny," I said, slow, deliberate. "You didn't care when I had nowhere to go." She exhaled shakily. "But I didn't mean—" I cut her off, voice cold as steel. "You threw my daughter onto the street, Sarah. A kid." A pause, her breath hitching. I was just trying to—" "No," I snapped. "You were trying to erase me, and you failed." Silence. She had nothing left to say, no defense, no lies to spin. "Rachel," she croaked, voice breaking. I sighed, final, unyielding. "Figure it out." I hung up. The line dead. The connection severed for good. The next day, they were gone. Evicted. Forced out. I didn't watch. Didn't need to. Neighbors texted me. Sarah screaming, begging, threatening lawsuits that had never come. Margaret and Tom shuffling off to relatives, broken. They had nothing, no home, no money, no daughter to save them. Sarah thought she'd won. She'd lost everything. And me? I was just beginning to rise. A year later, I woke to silence. No desperate calls, no angry texts, no pleading voicemails, just peace. At 39, I'd built a new life in a new city. New house, new job, new everything. No baggage, no family dragging me down, no Sarah. I sold the house she'd been evicted from, took every dollar, and left the past in ashes. Emily, now 13, thrived, her laugh echoing through our home, her teal backpack swapped for one she picked herself. For the first time in years, I wasn't looking over my shoulder, wasn't haunted by guilt or manipulation. I was free. One morning, sipping coffee in a sunlit cafe, I ran into Claire Evans, an old friend, 40. She spotted me first, eyes widening. "Lily!" I turned, smiled. "Hey, Claire!" She blinked, then grinned. "You look amazing." I did. I felt it, lighter, stronger, whole. A home I loved, a career I'd earned, peace I'd fought for. She hesitated, stirring her drink. "Do you still talk to Sarah?" I took a slow sip, letting the question hang, then smiled again. "No." Her eyebrow lifted. "You don't miss them?" I set my cup down, steady. I don't miss the person I had to be around them. And that was the truth. Sarah, 36 now, was a ghost. Jobless, homeless, irrelevant. I'd heard whispers. She'd lost everything after the eviction, her credit ruined, her reputation dust. Margaret and Tom, 63 and 66, scraped by with relatives, no longer my problem. They'd tried to erase me, thought I was disposable. In the end, I'd erased them, and I'd never been happier. Weeks earlier, Sarah had called one last time. I'd stared at her name flashing on my screen, a stain I'd long scrubbed clean. Curiosity won, I picked up, silent, a shaky breath, then her voice, tired, strained. "Lily, I have nothing left." I waited, letting her words sink into the void, her desperation palpable. "I don't have a job. I don't have a place to stay. I cut her off, calm, final. "Sounds like a you problem," she exhaled sharply. "You don't understand." "No, Sarah," I said, a faint smile tugging my lips. "I understand perfectly." A pause, her breath catching. "You thought I was disposable," I continued, slow, deliberate. "You thought I'd always be there to clean up your mess. Thought I'd forgive you." Silence. "You wanted me gone. Now I'm gone." I hung up. No goodbye, no second chances. She'd made her choice when she threw Emily out, when she bet I'd break. She'd lost that bet, and herself. I didn't check on her after that. Didn't care where she landed. She'd spent years taking from me my money, my trust, my love, and when she learned what it felt like to be discarded, I wasn't there to catch her. She had no one to blame but herself. The day she moved out, neighbors said she'd packed her life into boxes, alone, no help, no pride left. She'd locked that door, thinking she'd won, only to realize she'd lost it all. For years, I'd thought family meant loyalty, that I had to stay, give more, forgive more, to earn their love. I was wrong. Some people only see you as useful, not as family, not as a person worth respecting. When you stop serving them, they toss you aside. So I left before they could throw me away again. And in leaving, I won. Sarah lost everything, her home, her status, her sister. Me? I finally had it all, peace, freedom, a life I chose. She'd tried to erase me. She only erased herself.